turning around. You can see it has bow thrusters, which pushes the bow one way or the other. It also has stern thrusters. The bow is still being pushed to the right or starboard. Their propellers are now spinning. It won't take long, that ship will be going out the channel. It's already moving right along. Got a big old truck up the hill. I think it's full of stone. Good evening. This is Mike Tillison's Columbus Day, and we're looking at the full moon. A little after 9 o'clock. The sun went down tonight at 7 o'clock. Yeah, the sun went down at 7 o'clock. And now it's about 9 and the moon is up a ways. Really mild tonight. I'm sitting out here with a sweater and a shirt. This is the October moon. What's the day? 12th, 13th, something like that. Columbus Day. No mail. I think just about any place you go in town, I suppose if I lived on the other side of the street, I wouldn't have the wires, but between me and the moon, or all the cables that are up in the air, telephone and power. Got some cables here that are about 1 inch in diameter that black squirrels run along. I suppose fox squirrels do too, or gray squirrels, whatever they are. They use that as a thoroughfare. As you can see, the moon is just going up. I've been watching Halloween movies. Some of them pretty scary. I've watched a couple already on Michael Myers, or Myers, I don't know what it is. Myers, I think. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. But you see the man in the moon is quite distinct. His eyeball is right in the very center of the moon. And the first one, he's looking toward 9 o'clock. Great big hairdo. Eye, nose, and mouth, and chin. Then at about 2 o'clock, you see a harp seal on its, laying on his head. His eyes are pretty big. They're actually craters. The moon is about 2,100 miles in diameter. If it were sitting on the Earth, go from Los Angeles to about the Great Lakes. It's not really very big. The gravity is about 1/6 of what it is here on Earth. There's actually another man in the moon. Yeah, he's leaning back a little bit. Those two big round circles are now sunglasses. He's leaning back. Sometimes I can see it and sometimes I can't. This Sony, which is really quite old for a video camera, I can set the exposure and I can set the focus. Right now it's on infinity. This little diagram of a couple mountains that are in the viewfinder. See, one of the advantages of me videoing the moon is getting cold. You don't have to. You can stay home and watch this in your living room. But the moon, of all the things I do other than my family, is my favorite subject. You can see how the moon comes up into the picture. Yeah, the one man in the moon is dead profile, looking at his left face, left side of his face. He's looking straight at 9 o'clock. Big bushy hair. And then now it flips for me, and the guy is looking, leaning back, and the hair is now big, huge sunglasses. If you can see it, even when I point it out to you, you're doing very good. Most people can't see it unless I show them a photograph and draw out the two views. Then they go, ooh! I'm going to let the moon come up one more time. And I think I'll stop until later on at night. The sky is not clear, but it's the clearest it's been in several days. Sometimes I don't even try to video the moon no matter what it is. You can see how the moon is coming up. And you'll notice how it moves to the right. Comes up and to the right, very, very slowly. If you were out here looking at the moon, unless you got some wires or something between you and the moon, you wouldn't even be able to see this moving. Very slow. It takes about 5 minutes to go to the diameter of the moon. Which I think is 1 degree of arc. And if I have to explain that to you, you wouldn't understand it. Yeah, I'll see it moving right, so I can move the camera a little bit to the right to catch it. I'm not going to stay out here very long because it's getting a little chilly. Okay, I've had enough. This is like television on a Sony camera. Good night.
They look fine. You say, hey, but here's the curious thing, because Moody's
Hey, it's Thursday afternoon.
on those economic numbers. By the way, they
I'm going to show you. With this Sony, I'm on a wide angle.
Most Americans can see the economy doing what, if you believe.
See the stop sign down there?
Jesse,
In the middle?
Jesse, believe me, if the middle class felt the way you did, why is it, and this is the point, why is it that, in fact, President Trump's never reached 50% approval?
Because you don't have to like your boss.
I see.
You don't have
So
to like your boss.
in other words, most Americans say they're not going to vote to re-elect Trump. Oh, so in other words, Moody's is based on a model, branch to have a normal president. This guy
Is not
is not a normal. You heard me.
That my daughter was okay.
If I met another veteran and they were with another insurance company, I would tell them, you need to join USAA because they have better rates and better service.
We're the Gomez family. We're the Rivera family.
We are the Kirby family and we are USAA members for life.
Get your auto insurance quote today.
A black squirrel.
Beto O'Rourke drawing major criticism over his plan for a mandatory assault weapons buyback program. The 2020 Democrat has made it a big issue in the campaign.
He's quite a ways
He's
away.
now elaborating more on what the...
You're good.
Okay, hello everyone.
Hello.
My name is Bob Zealish, and on behalf of the Manistee Tea Party, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. We will begin with a prayer. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly entreat you that we always prove ourselves a people mindful of your favor and glad to do your will. Bless our land with honorable industry and sound learning. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and protect our Constitution. Empower with the spirit of wisdom those to whom in your name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to your law, we may show forth your praise among the nations of the earth. In the time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness. And in the day of trouble, do not allow our trust in you to fail. All of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Would you pledge allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just a couple of brief announcements, and then we can get started. There's Kathy Charlotta. There's Kathy. There she is, hiding back there. Has brought petitions over on the table for John James. He's right there. For those interested in signing petitions for our hopefully next senator, Kathy has those tonight. Next month, November, that will be our final meeting of the year. We're having a joint meeting next month with the Manistee Tea Party and the Manistee County Republican Party. The speaker will be someone a lot of us know, one of our former members, Steve Yoder. Steve is now a state committeeman for the Michigan Republican Party and chairman of our first congressional district Republican Party. He's going to go back and try and recap everything that Michigan Republican Party has done the past year, and then look forward ahead to what's going to be a very wild and crazy year next year. And look ahead at what they're planning and what we can expect. So just keep that in mind. That's Thursday, November 21st at 6:30.
Right here?
Okay.
Is that right here?
Yeah. What?
At this building?
At this building, yeah, same place, same time. 5:30 for dinner, 6:30 for the program. Okay, let's get started. I've got fortunate to have Mason County Sheriff Kim Cole tonight. It's the first time he's been here. A little bit of background. Okay, here we go. Okay, Sheriff Cole is a 7th generation Mason County resident and great-great-grandson to Sheriff Henry Cole, who served as county sheriff from 1899 to 1903. Sheriff Cole graduated from Ludington High School in 1982 and West Shore Community College in December of 1984. At age 20, he was a member of the Manistee of the Mason County Sheriff's Reserves, and at just over 21 years of age, hired on as a Marine Patrol deputy. Following the summer of 1985, Sheriff Cole was hired full-time as a deputy sheriff, working various duties including corrections, dispatch, road patrol, and secondary road patrol. Sheriff Cole was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 1993, under sheriff in December of 2012, and took the oath of office as sheriff of Mason County on January 1st, 2013. In 2017, Sheriff Cole was appointed by Governor Rick Snyder to serve on the state's 17-member marijuana advisory panel. With that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff.
Can you all hear me okay, or do I need the microphone? What's best for you? You can hear me all right? All right. If I was handcuffed and asked to speak, I would say absolutely nothing, because I have to have my hands to help me talk. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. An interesting story about my great-great-granddad. He was literally the sheriff of Mason County during the Wild Wild West. He was the first lawman in Mason County history to be shot in the line of duty, and he was shot by the dog warden. The story goes that the dog warden had beaten his daughter up in a drunken rage and ended up at a bar called Newman's Saloon in downtown Ludington, where, now Newman's Saloon was kind of an uppity saloon in downtown Ludington, and the prosecutor and the judge were in there sharing a drink, having a drink together. And then today that would be taboo, right? So Ludington didn't have a police department. They had a night watchman, like a constable, if you will. And he went in there and he found the dog warden and tried to arrest him, and he pulled a pistol. And somebody snuck out of the bar and went over to the jail, which where the jail is today, that's where it was in 1900. He was shot on November 29th, 1900. And got my great-great-granddad, and he went over there and tried to reason with the guy. And as the guy went to shoot the prosecutor, my great-great-granddad reached up, tried to grab the gun, and was shot through the hand. So, kind of an interesting story. So, before we get started, I just want to make one thing crystal clear to everybody. I wholeheartedly, 100% support anyone who wants to come to America in pursuit of the American dream. The only thing I would ask is they do it through the lawful and legal channels provided. Okay? I'm not a racist. I'm not a homophobe. I don't hate illegal immigrants. None of that. All right? And I share that with you because I appreciate the bio. I didn't know you had all that dirt on you. Probably ought to be a little more careful in what I tell people. But anyway, in 2011. I decided I was going to run for sheriff, something I never ever wanted. I never aspired to be the sheriff. I never even really aspired to be a policeman. I had went away to college after high school, and I broke my leg really bad. I learned that flag football in college is only, the flag in flag football is only a disclaimer. It's anything but flag football. And I broke my leg really bad, and I ended up coming home, and my mom and dad said, you know, son, if you don't stay in school, you'll never go back. So with my leg in a hip cast, I went to West Shore Community College. I enrolled in school, and I was having a hard time getting around college, so I actually went to the Secretary of State's office and got a handicap sticker so I could get preferred parking on campus, and ended up enrolling in the police academy, and here I sit today. Wow. But I never wanted to be the sheriff. In 2011, some things were going on, and I didn't really appreciate, so I started talking to former sheriffs, and one of the sheriffs I chatted with was Sheriff Larry Stewart. And Sheriff Stewart said, you know, if you're going to run for sheriff, you'll be successful when you can accomplish two things and accept two things. He said, number one, when you walk into a room, you have to be able to acknowledge and accept the fact you're not the smartest person there. And I said, well, that won't be a problem. I was a C student growing up, so I'm perfectly fine being average in a room. And he said, the second thing you need to understand and accept is people will call you horrible names, They will accuse you of things that are outrageous. They'll make accusations against your wife, and your kid will be labeled a drug addict. That's just the way it is in politics. And I said, Larry, that'll never happen to me. I was a DARE officer. I was a school resource guy. All the kids loved me. This will be fine. And I learned that that's not quite the case. So on January 1st, 2013, I took the oath of office. And I was in office 2 weeks, and I had a hanging in my jail. Non-fatal, but a hanging nonetheless. In September 9th, 2013, was probably one of the toughest days in my entire career. That was the night Paul Butterfield was murdered on a traffic stop in Mason County. And people thought that that was my first really big challenge as the sheriff of the county, was having a policeman murdered. But it wasn't. In June of 2013, I had an abduction and rape of a 9-year-old boy right down the road here in Grant Township. And the kid didn't know who the assailant was, and we had nothing. But our deputies started knocking on doors, and in short order, we established a suspect who we thought was a viable candidate. And Manistee County deputies and Manistee PD actually picked the guy up for us. And that guy was convicted and sent to prison. And then, of course, Paul was killed in September. But in the meantime, in late July, and I share that stuff with you to get to this point. In late July, I had 25 females in my jail, 5 of which were pregnant. And female inmates bring a special challenge to law enforcement, and not necessarily a bad challenge, but it's different than dealing with male inmates. And when they're pregnant inmates, that really brings in challenges. So one late July day, I'm sitting at my desk, and the county nurse comes in, who had been retained by the previous sheriff under contract, and we just honored, we kept the contract intact. And she comes and sees me, and she says, "Hey, Sheriff, I got to tell you, you got another pregnant female inmate in jail. We found out one's pregnant this morning, girl that came in the other night." She said, "But don't worry about this one, this isn't going to be a problem. We're preparing this young lady for an abortion." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, is there a problem? Am I missing something? Is she sick or what?" She said, "No, she's a drug addict facing 2 felony charges and doesn't know who the father is, and now she found out she's pregnant. So this is just the only thing that she really has control of in her life, and she wants to have an abortion." And I said, I'm not going to sign off on that, okay? The taxpayers aren't going to pay for it. We're not going to pay for a deputy to take her to an abortion clinic. We're not going to spend taxpayer gas. If she wants to have the abortion, she can be released from our care and custody and go do what she has to do. That was in July. September 9th, Paul's killed. And the one thing I've always tried my very best to be is professional and be a good ambassador for the citizens of Mason County. And I'm pleased to see several of our county residents here this evening. But the night Paul was killed, I was at a Victory Township meeting, and I left the meeting when I learned that a policeman had been shot. And I sat in the back of the ambulance with Paul while we waited for the helicopter to get there. And during that time, I had close to 40 text messages from media outlets all over the Midwest wanting to know what was going on. And obviously I didn't respond to any of them that night. And then when Paul died, I went to his funeral up here in Manistee Saturday. And by then, Paul was killed on a Monday, the funeral was Saturday, and in the interim days, I had had enough of the media. And I could feel myself going off the rails. And I told my wife at Paul's funeral, I said, "We got to get out of town. I can't take it." So we got home, we packed our bags, and we went west for 19 days. And we ended up in Arizona, taking back roads. We went to the Badlands, Mount Rushmore, Grand Tetons, Yellowstone, Moab, Bryce Canyon. We were all over the place and had a wonderful time. Well, while I'm out there and I'm coming back, my undersheriff calls me and says, "Hey, you remember that girl that was pregnant in July that wanted the abortion?" And I'm like, "Yeah, vaguely. Why?" He goes, "Well, she got the court order, and we're going to release her from jail on a family emergency." And I said, "Okay." And she had to come back Sunday night. I said, "I want her in my office Monday morning. Tell her she's going to be in my office Monday morning." So I drive back, and Monday morning comes around, and she's in my office, and she says, she won't look at me. I said, what's your problem? And she says, well, you hate me. And I said, no, I don't hate you. That's what I want you to know, is I don't hate you. I said, but you're going to go through a lot of challenges in the months and years ahead. And while you're in our custody, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call. If you ever need to talk to somebody, whether it's 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning, you let our staff know. We'll make sure you have somebody to talk to. And she says, well, I didn't have the abortion. She said, they kept referring to my baby as it. And, you know, it will go away, blah, blah, blah. And she realized she couldn't do it. So she said, I'm going to have the baby, but I'm a drug addict. And I can't take care of this kid. And I said, well, for 6 months you're in our care and custody. We'll get you cleaned up. And we hooked her up with an adoption agency, and things went great. And this is baby Chase. Chase was born, that picture was taken on my birthday. He was 1 day old. He was born 1 day before my birthday, my 50th birthday. And she got out of our jail and came and saw me. I would have her often up to my office, and we'd have peanut butter cups and talk about, you know, life and how the pregnancy was going and whatnot. And one day after she got out of jail, Mom came and saw me, and she brought me a bag of peanut butter cups. And I said, man, you're looking great. You know, her eyes were clear, her face was beautiful. She was out there pregnant. And I said, what do you do? And she says, I'm going to have a C-section at the end of the month. And I said, you're never going to make it. So I wrote my phone number down, my cell phone number on a business card, and I said, hey, would you call me when you have the little guy? He was being adopted out right away. And she said, I'll do that. The next day, she had the baby, and the following day, I got the phone call. So we never advertised this. We never put it out there for the media. But Right to Life in Mason County found out about it about 3 months later. 3 months later. And then the Daily News did a story on it in Ludington. Mason County Press did a story, and then it went boom. LifeNews.com got a hold of it, and it had over 16,000 shares on Facebook. Wow. And then I learned what Sheriff Stewart was saying about people will hate you. I had hate email from all over America. There's a lady in Kansas that emailed me, and I can vividly remember her email, where she said, if I find you, I'm going to kill you. And I was accused of hating women, and it was outrageous what people would say, and they hadn't a clue. And it wasn't until Right to Life Michigan called me and wanted to do a story. And the last question the kid asked me was, why'd you do it? And I'd been waiting for somebody to ask that question. And I said, well, what you don't know is my mom turned 16 on February 25th, 1964, and I was born March 10th, 1964. And I would imagine it was really difficult to be 15 and pregnant, wandering around Ludington, Michigan in the mid-1960s. But my mom did it to afford me the opportunity to write my own life story. And who in the world am I, as a county sheriff, not to give this kid the opportunity to write his own life story? So I've learned about people that hate you that have no knowledge at all. In 2014, 2 New York City police officers were murdered sitting in their car, Officer Ramos and Officer Liu. And a week earlier, the NYPD was blocking roads so protesters could chant that they wanted dead cops and they wanted them now. And a week later, they got 2 of them in New York City. And I stood up and I said, doggone it, I'm not going to allow these idiots to tear our country apart. So I went out to the people that detail out our police cars, stripe out our police cars, Northwood signs. And I said, I want a dozen stickers that say One Nation Under God, and here's a $100 bill, I'll pay for them out of my own pocket. And we put One Nation Under God stickers on the backs of all of our police cars. Well, then I was accused of hating non-Christians. Well, now the sheriff's not, if you're a Catholic, they're not going to send the police. If you're a Methodist, you might have to wait an hour. It's just stupid stuff. It was outrageously ignorant what people would think. and I had a couple citizens tell me they didn't appreciate it. And I said, well, it's been vetted through the U.S. Supreme Court, so that's the way it is. Or not the U.S. Supreme Court, but the Federal Circuit Courts. And they stay. And about every 7 months or so, I get a letter from the Freedom from Religion Foundation demanding that I take the stickers off my cars. And then they want me to write a program, basically, on how I'm going to win the trust back of my citizens in my county. And every time I send it through the shredder, and I don't do it. So anyway, that's a little bit about myself and what leads us to this point tonight. We're going to talk about a recent trip I had out to let's get this going here. Out to Washington, D.C. These are 5 Michigan sheriffs. Sheriff Matt Saxton from Calhoun County, Ted Schindel from Benzie, you might know Ted. Paul Bailey, he's the sheriff in Berrien County, myself in Mason. Pat Whiteford, he's the sheriff up in Kalkaska County. Us 5 Michigan sheriffs were invited to Washington, D.C. as part of the 2019 FAIR Conference. FAIR is the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Sheriff Bailey had been there in the past, and never under a Republican president, however. He was there under the Obama administration, and President Obama wouldn't even meet with the sheriffs. There were 40 of them that went out at that time. So when Bailey was invited out, he sent an email out to us sheriffs asking if anybody wanted to go. 5 of us stepped up and went, and it was actually my idea to try to get the sheriffs who were on the board of directors. I thought it would have been cool to have the Michigan Sheriff's Board of Directors attend, and that's Pat Whiteford. He's the sheriff, the board rep for the 2nd District. I'm the representative for the 3rd District, so I am Mason, Oceana, Muskegon counties all the way east across the state, 17 counties. Bailey's the past president. Matt Saxton out of Calhoun, he's the sheriff of the 2nd District. And then Schindel, he just somehow got wormed his way into it, which is fine, which was a good deal. So that's us on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., right before the conference started. This was 100% funded by FAIR, okay? So no taxpayer money was spent on our trip there. The one thing, FAIR paid for our hotel, they paid for our airfare, we picked up our meals. And because I have a wife that's rather sophisticated on the internet and iPhones, she actually downloaded that Uber app on my phone. So I got stuck paying for the Ubers because I was the only one that could dial up an Uber right away. Wow. And they had my credit card on file, so I bought Ubers for everybody. But it was very interesting. I'll tell you this. I flew out of Grand Rapids on a direct flight on a plane that had 4 seats across. You know, it was a jet, but it wasn't a very big jet. It maybe held 60 or 70 people. And I'm sitting there at my seat, and we're going to an immigration conference, okay, on border security, human trafficking, drug use, and secure borders and stuff like that. Guess who sits right next to me? A Russian immigrant who is flying to Washington, D.C. to go to the Russian embassy to validate her passport. She had went through the proper channels and became a U.S. citizen, migrated here from Russia legally, and she loves our country so much, she's willing to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and catch a flight for 1 day to D.C. to go to the Russian embassy and then fly home so that she can keep her passport so she can go home to see family when she wants to. Remarkable story. The plane's getting ready to leave, and the fellow steps on the plane. He's sitting in front of me, and he's putting his carry-on in the overhead. And he looks back, he looks at me, and he says, "Good morning," and I said, "Hi." And he looked back. It's Congressman Bill Huizenga, which is my congressman. I live south of Decker Road in Mason County. And Bill's like, "Kim, did I know you were going to be in D.C.?" And I'm like, "No." He said, "We need to get together." And I said, "Well, I'm kind of busy, but we'll see what we can do." So I get to D.C., and I get 2 calls from Huizenga's office saying, "Hey, the congressman really wants his sheriff to come by." So I grabbed Bailey, Ted, and Pat. Matt Saxton, he houses federal ICE prisoners in his jail, and they had a huge press conference in DC. Saxton was invited to that press conference. While we were meeting with Huizenga, Saxton was on Fox News as part of the press conference. So Bill Huizenga actually left a committee meeting Thursday morning at 9:30 to meet with us sheriffs, which I thought was remarkable, that this guy wanted to meet with us, all right? And the crazy thing was, FAIR had set this conference up 3 months ahead of time, all right? And every state that had a sheriff there, their states, their U.S. senators were contacted and said the sheriffs would like to meet with their U.S. senators. Peters, that do-nothing senator, never even responded to our emails. Never even said, drop dead. I mean, or NO period send. Stabenow wouldn't meet with us, but at least she had a staffer meet with us. So I left Huizenga's office to head to Stabenow's office, and I don't know if they thought because we were part of the FAIR group that we were just going to hammer them on immigration and secure borders, but folks, we have a mental health crisis in America, and certainly in Michigan, okay? We have people in the Mason County Jail that don't belong in our jail. They have a mental illness. But they kick a door, they get arrested, because the hospital can't keep them, there's no place to put them, and they go to jail. And they don't belong there. We're not helping them with their mental illness in the jail, and we have deputies that eventually get assaulted. You know, it's just not good. And I wanted to talk to Senator Stabenow about mental health. Okay, the other thing we have is you can be on Medicaid your whole life, and then you get arrested, and on day 31 of your incarceration, Medicaid kicks you out of their system. And then the local taxpayers have to pay for their medical treatment. These were conversations I was hoping to have with our U.S. senators. And Peters wouldn't even respond, and Stabenow gave us a staffer. I would trust that the staffer sent our messages on to the senator, but we'll see. So, first day we were there, we met on the Capitol lawn there. You saw the other picture. This gentleman comes up to me and he says he saw my patch, Michigan Sheriff's patch, and he says, "You're sheriff from Michigan?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He started tearing up. He goes, "I had no idea Michigan sheriffs cared about immigration reform." And I said, "Well, why would you say that?" He said, "This is my son. This is actually that right there. His son is Chris Eggle. Chris Eggle is a 1991 Cadillac High School graduate. He was a valedictorian of his high school. He was an Eagle Scout. He was a National Honor Society. He ran cross country for the University of Michigan. His dream was to be a federal park ranger. Chris, after his time at Michigan, went to the National Parks Academy in Virginia, graduated #1 in his class. This is a Cadillac kid. This is one of us, right? He was patrolling the Oregon Pike Cactus National Monument in southern Arizona when he was murdered by illegals who had murdered Mexican residents and were fleeing the police. Actually, it was an active pursuit, fleeing police, and they ran into America, and they got in a gunfight, and sadly Chris was killed. And we were met with angel families. His folks are angel parents, and his story was remarkable, remarkable. And to have Michigan sheriffs part of that when you have a Michigan kid that's killed was really hit home. That really highlighted the entire event for me. This is Chris's mom and dad, and we had a great time chatting. There's sheriffs from all over. This is kind of funny. I had the picture in there, and then I had to take it out because it made me so mad. So my in-laws winter in Florida, in Rockledge, Florida, which is in Brevard County. Sheriff Ivey is the sheriff in Brevard County, Florida. Do any of you know who he is? He makes national news all the time. He's a really good guy. He's the sheriff of a county of nearly 1 million people. Well, my in-laws think he's the greatest sheriff in America, not their own son-in-law. So he was there, Sheriff Ivey was there, and I got a picture with Sheriff Ivey, but sheriffs from all over our country, really cool stuff. So some of the folks we had speak to us, Tom Holman, former director of Customs and Border Patrol. You've probably seen him on Fox News. Very, very good guy. And it was really cool having these folks there supporting us and more importantly, supporting the Angel families. Steve Scalise, U.S. Congressman that was shot. I was fortunate enough to be able to shake both of these gentlemen's hands. It was a remarkable experience. This is an Angel mom telling her son's story. He was murdered by an illegal. This lady right back here, her name is Mendoza, and she's been on Fox News quite a bit. Her son was a police officer in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona maybe, that was murdered by an illegal drunk driver that was going the wrong way on the interstate and hit and killed her son. And she's been on Fox News quite a bit, and it was really cool because she came up to me when we were kind of milling around and actually gave me a hug and said, thank you for coming out to this event. To have Michigan sheriffs here, she said, really, really means a lot to us. Now, I talked about the U.S. senators being contacted, right? There was one Kentucky sheriff there, and Mitch McConnell took time to meet with the lone Kentucky sheriff, which I thought spoke volumes. Matter of fact, when Paul Bailey, the sheriff of Marion, found out that Mitch McConnell was going to meet with his Kentucky sheriff, and the Michigan senators weren't going to meet with the Michigan sheriffs, Bailey bailed and went to the Kentucky. Got to meet Mitch McConnell and got a picture taken with him. I guess I would have done the same thing, right? So while we're there, we're getting ready to wrap things up. We had some pictures taken, and then the protesters started showing up. And they had no idea what we were doing there. I can only assume, well, maybe they did. But they formed a wedge in the middle of 190 sheriffs and Angel families and actually went right up the middle of us with megaphones, and they were chanting things so loud and so obnoxious you couldn't hear what they were even saying. So right after that picture was taken with Chris's mom and dad was when the protesters started showing up. And we actually had a meeting later that day. We were meeting, and I'll show you the slides coming up, with the director of ICE and the director of Customs and Border Patrol. And they had, it's kind of, you can't really see, but they all had black t-shirts on. And these folks were very well organized, okay? There was probably 200 of them to start with that formed the wedge. And then these folks came out of nowhere. I don't know where they even came from. And then people with boxes, big boxes, showed up, and they started dropping the boxes and ripping the boxes open, and they were throwing black t-shirts everywhere to anybody that would take them, and they were putting on black t-shirts. We were not allowed, as sheriffs or law enforcement officers, to have guns at the Capitol and obviously the White House. Okay, we were not allowed to have. Matter of fact, a couple sheriffs had guns, and they were told they had to lock them in a box. So we're in uniform, obviously, and we're not allowed to have firearms. So us 5 Michigan sheriffs left, and we went down to, what's the big train station in DC? Is it Union Station? Union Station. In the basement of Union Station is like a food court, a big food court. So we were going to go there and have lunch. We figured we'd get a few blocks away from the Capitol, things that settled down for us. It didn't. They were at Union Station, people in black t-shirts with a hashtag something on it, I couldn't read what it said. And they started oinking at us when we were in the basement and kind of started surrounding the 5 of us, and we got nothing to protect ourselves with, you know. So we got up and left there and ended up going to the hotel where the afternoon presenters were at. But it was it was really unfortunate that, you know, these people that say they want to be tolerant are anything but tolerant. They hate you for what you stand for, and they don't even know you. And that's why I wanted to make it really clear at the start, I'm all for immigration. I really am. I want every person to pursue the American dream, but they got to do it the right way. They gotta do it the right way. And for anybody to say that I hate people is just not fair. It's not fair to say that about me because you don't even know me. But these people, forget about talking to them. It's over. Theo Wold is a special assistant to President Trump. This is a young man that is probably one of the smartest people I've ever heard speak. Very, very intelligent young man. Talking about the president's policies, you know, where we're going as a country. And this guy was so smart, I couldn't write fast enough all the things he was saying. But a very good young man. This is Director Perez with the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. And the crazy thing was, because we were kind of rushed out of our lunch, and we went down to the hotel, about 4 blocks to the hotel, us Michigan sheriffs were the first one in the room. So I sat right front center, right? I sat right in the front. I'm like, I'm probably never going to get back here. So I sat right in the front row, right in the center, and Theo comes up and sits right next to me. And I don't know who he is, you know, and he's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, really good, you know. What's with the long hair and the scruffy beard kind of thing? And he shook my hand, and it was pleasant, and then they introduced him as a special assistant to President Trump, and I'm like, holy crap, I shook the hand of the guy that probably shook the hand of the president on the back, you know. So it was really neat. Director Perez, you know, the Customs and Border Patrol, those guys are under an enormous amount of pressure. We hear things, we hear name calling, they're referred to often as Nazis and stuff like this, but you need to understand, just to put it in perspective, what Customs and Border Patrol does every year. Customs and Border Patrol agents vet 450 million people coming through legal ports of entry into the United States. 450 million people. Nearly 500 million people they vet, each and every one of them. And you and I included. You know, I travel and I come back to the States. I got to get vetted, just like all of you, but they're vetting people from Europe, you know, Canada, Africa, South America, Latin America, all over the world. They also process $2.6 trillion in commerce coming in through legal ports of entry. But they're no better in the eyes of some than as Nazis. Okay? They intercept over 800 this year. This fiscal year just ended for the federal government. It ended September 30th. They intercepted 800,000 people trying to cross our border illegally in the South. In 2014, I was invited to the new sheriff's school through the National Sheriff's Association out in Aurora, Colorado. And I had applied for it. I was the only Michigan sheriff selected that year. And it was kind of funny, I was there with 5 Ohio sheriffs, and you know the Michigan-Ohio State thing, okay? So these guys, Ohio sheriffs, when they get elected, they get to go to Columbus and they get custom fitted for a Buckeye red blazer jacket. And they wear them everywhere. So anyway, when I'm in Denver, or Aurora, Colorado, suburb of Denver for this training, the very first sheriff I met was a sheriff named Leon Wilmot, a great big cowboy hat. He and I were checking into the hotel together, and he knew I was a sheriff. I obviously could tell he was a sheriff, and he and I went to dinner that night. He's a sheriff of Yuma County, Arizona, southwest corner of Arizona. And he was telling me, you know, this was in 2014, September of 2014. And he was telling me back then, the drug runners were filling the car washer reservoirs, you know, for your car washer fluid, filling them with liquid heroin, smuggling them into the United States. He was saying a fair number, one's too many, but a fair number of the apprehensions they were getting were Middle Easterners. And that really struck me as a problem. You know, after 9/11, I was really like, you gotta be kidding me. And he said, yeah, it's a problem, but they were in the process of putting a border fence up, you know, through his county at that time. And he was actually, the second day we were in Colorado, he had to leave our class because he was on Neil Cavuto's show, talking about, through a Fox affiliate in Denver, about the problems on the border. So our Customs and Border Patrol agents, they do a crackerjack job. They really, really do. And it's not fair that you have people in high-ranking positions in our federal government referring to these people as Nazis. and want to eliminate these positions altogether. I mean, 450 million people they vet coming into our country every year. So, Ken Cuccinelli, he's the acting director of ICE. He was another one, shook my hand, I had no idea who that guy was. Seen him on the news, you know, I was just starstruck that I was amongst these people. So we had a very nice talk, and you know, he was presenting stuff like, you know, ICE works with Custom and Border Patrol. You know, they've effectively shut down the dark web for fentanyl coming into America. Okay, the people ordering it, ICE partnering with Customs and Border Patrol, they have really restricted, they've really tightened the noose around the necks of our drug dealers that are sending this fentanyl into our country. And it's, you know it, you see it, it's killing scores of people in our country. So they do a remarkable job. Cuccinelli headed up the press conference that Saxton was at the next day, and they had rounded up like 1,100 illegals, and they invited some of the bigger county sheriffs to that press conference, so that was pretty cool. When we went to the White House on Thursday afternoon, the security there, as you would expect, is crazy, okay? We had to go through probably 6 different checkpoints as uniformed sheriffs to get into this room. And while we were going through there, you know, I'm talking to different sheriffs, and I got to talk to a sheriff from North Carolina that's a county a little bit bigger than Mason. 35,000, 40,000 residents, not very big county. And he's got 2 girls with him. And they don't have uniforms, but they got credentials on. And I said, Sheriff, who are these girls with you? A really nice looking black girl, and then another attractive looking girl. And he goes, these are my PIOs, public information officers. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. He goes, no, the one girl takes all my photos, and the other girl writes all my speeches. I somehow don't see the County Board of Commissioners in Mason County giving my own personal photographer and a public relations speechwriter. Anyway, pretty cool stuff. So anyway, I was talking to a sheriff from Texas, and he was telling me, he's up in the Panhandle. He said, I'm really not near the border, but close enough. And he said that the cost illegal immigration has in my county, he goes, I'm a small county, 13,000 residents is all it has. But he said, one example, they had an illegal come into his county, climb the fence of a school, and get into the bus garages and steal a school bus. Crash the school bus, drunk, he doesn't know what he's doing, you know, he's just drunk and being foolish. Crashes the school bus and knocks all his front teeth out. Taxpayers paid $31,000 to fix his teeth before they sent him back. Okay? That's the laws. That's the way it is. He goes, that's one case in one day in my county, and I deal with it 50 times a year. Every week, we're dealing with an illegal that's breaking the law and costing the taxpayers of my county money or peace of mind. And really, really amazing to hear some of the stories he shared. And he said, you know, he goes, it really means a lot that other sheriffs across America understand what we're going through, because you're not always getting the true story through the media. They're not always telling you everything that's actually going on. So when we finally made it in, that's the sheriff right there that's got the 2 girls that are his PIOs. He's a bigger guy. So anyway, we had a meeting with Kellyanne Conway and Udom Dolan. He's the director of the DEA, and he's Tom Murphy is a local coordinator for domestic relations that relates to the Office of Drug Control Policy. So we weren't just there talking about illegal immigration, secure borders. We were talking about drug enforcement. We were talking about human trafficking. We were talking about obviously secure borders, illegal immigration, but we were covering a lot of stuff. And we got in on a Tuesday and we flew out Friday morning. So it was a busy, busy couple, 3 days there. Yes, sir.
Why is Kellyanne Conway there?
She was there just as the advisor to the president to talk to us about what President Trump's doing.
Oh, so she's there to inform you
Yeah,
about what's
inform us.
happening in the White House?
Yep,
basically.
informing us on stuff going on in the White House. And I got to shake their hands, you know, it was really a pretty powerful, you know, to be able to sit, I'm only 2 rows back and sitting there from a girl that really gets the crap kicked out of her in the media all the time. She's a remarkably strong, mentally strong lady. Really.
She gives it back to you.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, one sheriff was he was kind of weird. He was madly in love with her. He kept telling her, I love you, Kellyanne. Yeah, right. Man, I was just like, whatever, dude. So, this is our meeting at the White House. After we had the press briefings, we got to meet with the President of the United States. And you can't really see, but that's me right there. That's me right there. This is me right there. Smiling. You know, this meeting with the President was 2 days after Nancy Pelosi stood before America and said they were going to start the impeachment process against the President. He had every right to cancel that meeting with us if he wanted to. He had every right to be crabby and grumpy. The first thing he says while he's standing here talking to us, and like I was telling folks earlier, to be from here to that back door away from the President of the United States is remarkable. It's really remarkable. To be able to hear this man talk, and he's not talking through a microphone. He's just talking like this. You know what the first thing he said was to us?
Thank you.
How are you guys doing? How are you doing, and thanks for what you do. You know, and talked for about 5 minutes about Washington, and one of the sheriffs said, you know, how are you doing, Mr. President? And in typical Donald Trump fashion, he says, you know, in 2015 they loved me. Now they hate my guts. And he said, the Democrats are almost as dishonest as these media people standing behind me. Wow. And you know, they got these, yeah, he just, you know, I cracked up laughing.
No wonder the media people love him so much.
Yeah. You know, and they got these microphones that are as big as me, standing, you know, leaning out, trying to hear everything he's saying. So it was really a powerful opportunity, and we were told to shut our phones off and put them in our pockets when we were at the White House. I must have been told that 10 times. Well, one sheriff, one of the 5 Michigan sheriffs, not me, and I'm not going to throw the guy under the bus, didn't follow that order and actually took pictures of the president walking up. And I got those on the black market, so I got them. So,
What did the president have to say?
He just thanked us for what we were doing, and when he turned around and he addressed the media, he goes, you know, you media folks need to understand these sheriffs, they have their back up against the wall, dealing with crime in their communities. And he said, we got sheriffs from all over the United States. I didn't know it, but he did. There were 40 states represented in the picture. Well, let's get there. That's all of us sheriffs on the south lawn of the White House. 190 sheriffs representing 40 states. President Trump knew that. I did not. And you know, when he addressed people, he said, you need to know these problems persist across America. It's not just a problem on the southern border. This is a problem plaguing America. And I will tell you, when I was telling some folks here, you guys must have got the word out, because I got a call from our local radio station this morning. And they said, hey, we understand you're speaking to the Tea Party group up in Manistee.
Stay away from there.
We'd like to talk to you. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to tell you what I'm telling the folks tonight. And he said, well, I'm not going to air it till tomorrow. You know, this was this afternoon. It's going on the news in the morning. You know, if I promise to hold the information. I said, well, yeah, then, you know, I'll give you, you know, the rundown. And it was, we were talking about, you know, all the problems. And he said, well, have you ever experienced an illegal immigrant victimize somebody in Mason County? I said, yes, I have. Twice that I know of, that are vivid in my memory. On a Saturday morning, 11:30, on an August Saturday morning, I was sent to a bad car wreck south of Scottville, south of Eisenheimer Road. It was a motorcycling car. And a guy was coming northbound on Scottville Road, and he had his grandkids in the car. and he stopped to make a left-hand turn into a private driveway where there's a birthday party for these 7 or 8-year-old kids. And he stopped and he's waiting for a southbound motorcycle with a husband and wife from the Grand Rapids area to go by. Coming up behind him is a drunk driver, illegal, who comes up over the hill and he lays down, I don't know, 200 or 300 foot of skid. He was really hauling. Can't stop, slides left to center. Instead of going into the ditch, he goes left to center, hits the motorcycle head on, he kills the husband there, the wife dies a couple days later at the hospital. That's one. And I know that because we had deported that guy a couple years earlier, and he'd come back. And during the plea agreement with our prosecutor's office, the prosecutor was going to allow him to plead to the drunk driving causing death and be deported. OWI caused death is a 15-year felony, okay? And our prosecutor, I said, sir, you can't deport this guy. He'll be back in 6 months. You know, he needs to go to prison. And when he's done serving his prison time for killing, one of our citizens, then he can be deported. But don't throw him out of the country now because he's going to come right back. The other one was a fellow that I had stopped south of Scottville again one night, on a summer night, for a bad plate on a car. And he gives me a name. He doesn't have any ID on him. He gives me a name, and I write his name down with the birth date he gives me, and I go back and I run him, and he's wanted out of Oceana County on a traffic warrant. So I drive him to the county line, I turn him over to an Oceana County deputy, they take him to jail, his family's waiting for him at the jail, and they post the bail, and they let him go. Well, what none of us knew was that was a fake name. He had given that name on a traffic stop in Oceana County and didn't show up on the ticket, so they issued a warrant for him, and he gave me that same name. So like a week later, I'm working nights again, and I'm coming into the office in Ludington, and they put out an alarm, a burglar alarm at 3 in the morning at a local bait shop right on Ludington Avenue. And I'm right there. I pull up, and he's crawling through the broken front door, and I arrest him. And in his back pocket is, guess what? My ticket I wrote him. So we take him to jail on the burglary, and when we fingerprinted him, live scanned him, he was a deported felon wanted for murder out of Mexico. 3 murders in Mexico. So, do these things affect us in Michigan? Absolutely they do. Not to the volume that you see in Texas or Arizona or New Mexico, but they very much affect us. And quite frankly, if one of us dies, be it an illegal driving drunk, or 3 of us die to illegals driving drunk, does it really matter? You've lost a friend. You've lost a colleague, you've lost a fellow that you come to dinner with on a Thursday night. So 1 is too many. 3 is unacceptable. 100 in one state I couldn't even imagine. Okay? The other thing that we learned, we took away, you hear about some of these illegals being caught at the border with minors. The federal standard for being a minor is 17 years old. What they don't tell you is the median age of the minors being accompanied by adults into America under the family protection is 14 to 16 years old. And more times than not, they find them once they get into America, the kids are off doing their thing. These are the kids that are joining MS-13. They're in New Jersey, they're in California, they're in New York City. They're killing people, they're raping people, they brutalize people, horrible. And I don't understand for the life of me why you would be, as a sheriff, have one of these people in your custody and let them go out the back door when they're done facing their state charges so they can go victimize again. For the life of me, I don't understand why you would do that. I would never allow that. And I would rather I would rather you hate me than have to tell someone that, your loved one was killed because I let the guy go. There was a case in Oklahoma City just last week where the sheriff let the guy go on a state charge. He served his time. He gets out, and what does he do? He went to the girl who he victimized the first time and landed him in jail and raped her again. And I just don't get why you would do that. So, ma'am, did you have a question in the back?
Yeah, I was wondering if you were able to speak with other sheriffs from the sanctuary cities or sanctuary states while you were in Washington, and what is your feel on your job?
So You know, that was asked to me, you know, were y'all Republicans in Washington?
What was the question?
And, you know, did we talk to sanctuary sheriffs? Were there any sanctuary sheriffs? Is that basically what you're saying?
Right.
There were none there, and not one time did anybody ask if I was a Republican or a Democrat, and I never asked another sheriff if I was a Republican or a Democrat. And I will tell you this, the state of Michigan has been kicking around for a couple of years now, eliminating party affiliation for county sheriffs. The Sheriff's Association did a survey this last spring, and it dumbstruck me that 85% of the Michigan sheriffs support eliminating their party affiliation. I was one of 15%, there's 83 sheriffs, so I was probably one of 5 that said no. I thought the party affiliation was important. Not because we're going to treat people different, because we don't do that. I don't have one form in my office that requires you to tell me what party you're affiliated with before I'll take your complaint. You know, we don't have a Democrat wing and a Republican wing of the county jail. We don't do those things. However, I do think that most of the citizens in Mason County do not know who I am. They know me, but they don't know who I am. Or they know who I am, but don't really know me, I guess. But they know that because I'm a Republican, right, wrong, or indifferent, they know that my value system is such. And if I was a Democrat, they would know my values would be such. And whether you support it or not, I stand for a certain set of values that are in line with the Republican Party, and people will either support me or they'll condemn me. And I'm willing to die on that hill. Because Mason County is a conservative county. You know? But, you know, like Leelanau County's changing. Leelanau County's becoming more Democrat. And, you know, I think if there's not a party affiliation, it becomes a popularity contest. And it doesn't become a value thing. You know, I would have never, ever thought, I'll get to you in one second. I would have never, ever thought my first year in office, I would be asked to sign off on an abortion for a lady in my jail. Could I have done it? Absolutely. I could have done that and nobody would have known. But my values, because of the way I was raised, required me to say I can't do that. I can't sign off on that. And today, Chase is 5 years old. And he's got a chance to write his own life story. You know, and that's another hill I'm willing to die on. You know, so.
How's his mother?
She's fine. Yeah, she doesn't live in our area anymore. I talk to her, not a lot, but what did I do? I don't talk to her a lot, but I do communicate with her on Facebook now and again, and she's doing fine. She's doing fine. She gets to see Chase often, and they get together. So, yeah. So, that's it. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to mention about the party affiliation issue that you were just talking about. Another plus for that is that your county Republican Party helps support you for your election and that kind of thing. If they take that away, then you know how it's going to lessen your ability to be more successful.
Absolutely right.
Democrats too, but still.
Yeah. Yeah, regardless of your party, it will affect your fundraising, the people that will stand alongside you and support you. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any knowledge of what is happening on our northern border, especially Michigan, but also all the way out to the state of Washington? Are we getting a lot of illegal immigrants coming in that way? Because we've had such good police work on the southern border.
Yes, there is information to lead that the northern border's obviously far more porous and vast than the southern border, and the southern border is getting all the attention. So it would stand to reason that people that really wanted to come to America to do damage to America, if they could get into Canada, could get their way into the United States pretty easily. Yeah.
Is there any plans that you know of to do anything about that?
None that I've heard of.
Is this going to take civil action by our
last state?
people live there? Is that what it's going to take?
Potentially. I don't know. But it's well, you know, That northern border along Montana, North Dakota, not a lot there. Yes, sir.
I was asking about Theo Wold,
Yeah.
Special Assistant to the President. What are his qualifications to be a special assistant, and what does a special assistant assist him with?
So he also is the right-hand man to Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law. So Theo Wold, I'll tell you, the only thing I know about the guy is when he looks at you, he stares right through you. I mean, he's the kind of guy that when you're instantly thinking, okay, is he going to kill me? Because I'm sitting next to him. He's a very intense young man. I don't know what his requirements are or his qualifications are. I know he's super, super smart.
How do you know that?
The way he talks, he's very intelligent, very, I don't know. I mean, when he shook my hand, he looked right through me, like he was looking in the back of my brain. So, yeah.
That would be scary.
It was scary. I think the president, from the people I met, and I don't know them, I only talked to him for a few minutes, but the people that the president has surrounded himself with they're the real deal. And I was coming up here tonight and I was listening to Patriot Radio, and I heard that who's the energy secretary? Harry is resigning. And they didn't, or not resigning, he's going to leave the administration, and they don't know what the timetable is. But in that level of leadership, I can imagine there's quite a turnover. You're dealing with some really strong A-dominant personality people, and they're going to clash. I mean, my undersheriff, Jody Hartley, was my undersheriff when I was first elected, and some of you know Jody. He is a hard-driving guy. And I will tell you, in 2014, somewhere in there, we had a guy on the county line that had his house foreclosed on, and the bank had taken the house back, and they sent a process server out there to serve this guy, and he met the process server at the door with a gun. And process server backs off, calls the department, the deputies get there, and the deputies see him, and they go up, and the door's open. And he pokes his head around, and they chase him into the house. He goes into a back bedroom, and they actually hear him rack the semi-automatic pistol. They hear the slide go. And they back off, the SWAT team gets called, Manistee County sends their deputies down, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wait a minute. Are we going to kill this guy because he didn't make his house payments? Do we really want to kill a guy because he didn't make his house payments? And I said, what if he gets lucky and he fires around through the wall and hits one of our guys in the head standing outside of the house? How do I go to a deputy's wife and say, your husband was killed because this guy got mad and fired rounds off because he didn't make his house payments? So I said, we're not going to go in. We're not sending the SWAT team in. We put a tracking device on his car, and we assigned a deputy to sit out down the road for days on end. And finally, he calls an uncle, who's a police officer in New Jersey, and says, would you call the cops? I'm tired. I want to give up. And he came out and gave up. But during that interim time, my undersheriff and I were nose to nose in my office. He says, that guy pointed a gun at one of your deputies, and you're going to let him do this? And I said, I'm not going to get one of us killed. I don't have a problem. Well, he's recording, so I got to be careful what I say. I don't have a problem killing a guy if it's justified to kill him. But I mean, we shouldn't, in law enforcement, look to go kill people, right? And if we're going to kill them, let's make sure that we have good standing while we're there. And Jody was the best employee we had at our department. He still is a really, really good guy. He retired, but that's the things that happen when you have a dominant personality people in the same room together. They fight like brothers. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to ask one thing I'd like to certain illegals are being brought to Baldwin, Michigan.
Right.
To the GEO prison.
Right.
They have a choice of serving a prison time versus deportation.
when their time is up, the courts decide what rights they will have? Are they going to be released in our area?
No, they will be, so the Geo prison, is capable of holding like 1,800 prisoners, I think. It's a big facility. And it's a privatized, I think the biggest thing people gripe they have is that it's privatized. Well, that's what those who don't want illegals housed are arguing right now. But these folks have broken a federal or state law that has landed them into incarceration. It's my understanding that they will do their time there, and then when they have served their time, they will be deported back to the country whence they came from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good question, and so I'll tell you this. So those that would argue for illegals staying in America, you know, the open borders and sheriff, you can't house people because, first off, they've said you can't house an illegal immigrant or an illegal in this country because the detainer that ICE sends you is not signed by a judge. Have you heard that argument before? Have you heard them saying that? They say, well, you can't enforce that detainer because. Did you leave me mine?
Okay.
Huh? No.
Yes!
So thank you. You didn't have to do that. So you've heard them say that you can't house an illegal because the detainer is not a judge's signature warrant, right? The problem with that theory in Michigan is we, for the 35 years I've been in law enforcement, have housed parole violators on parole detainers. Okay, that's not a judge's order. That what happens, a prime example is a guy gets parole from prison and he gets in a fight with a girl, an argument with a girl, and the police show up, and he hasn't broken the law other than he's been drinking alcohol and he's on parole, which he's not supposed to be doing. Okay? He hasn't broken the law. But you call his parole officer and you say, hey, I got Rose DeLoof here, and she's drunk and she's on parole, and what do you want us to do with her? And the parole officer will say, take her to jail, and I'll get you the detainer in the morning. That gives us the authority to house that person for 72 hours until they see a judge. So when they tell you that, Sheriff, you can't house a person because it's not a judge's warrant, that's just not true, because when you turn around and say, what about the parole detainers, they look at you. And then they say, well, you can't house on a federal warrant. Even if it is a warrant, you can't house federally because local law enforcement can't enforce federal law. Well, you're telling me then, if a person commits a bank robbery, which is a federal crime, and is wanted in Illinois, and we stop them on US 31, we have no authority to hold them because it's a federal warrant. Well, then they go away. I'm not trying to pick fights with people. I'm just trying to protect my citizens. That's it. That's it. But you got to be versed on what to say when people question what you're doing, because they try to twist things around. Yes, ma'am.
I recently saw where the Mexican government is on the verge of legalizing marijuana nationwide in Mexico. And I wondered if you think that's going to have much of an impact on the drug smuggling cartels.
Yeah.
I know they smuggle other kinds of drugs.
Yeah, I haven't heard about the legalization, but it won't impact the drug trafficking in America because this is where they're making their money. They're making billions and billions of dollars smuggling dope into America. And that was the one thing I wanted to tell you. President Trump, one of the things he told us was the Mexican government has sent 27,000 soldiers to the Mexican border with the United States to prevent illegals from getting to the border in the first place. So there are some things that are being done that should be quite open, that the media should be reporting these things to us, and they're not. The Mexican government sees the problems that it's creating for us, and like I said, they sent 27,000 soldiers to the border on the Mexican side to protect our border. So, anything else?
How is the opioid?
So, we had, in Mason County, we had 3 deaths in 7 days earlier this year of opioids. Heroin, meth, the fentanyl-laced dope, and it's still a very real problem, but what's happened is methamphetamines has become so cheap that people are turning to the meth instead of the heroin, and it's the heroin that tends to be laced with the fentanyl. So with the meth being so cheap, heroin supplies kind of went away, but that'll turn. In the next 6 months, that'll turn, and meth will get more expensive by supply and demand, and the heroin will be cheap, and that's when you'll start seeing people die again. Sadly. We got a guy here just a couple months ago that smuggled. He snuck 3 grams of meth up his hind end into our jail, and they had a cell block of 9 guys, and 7 of them tripped on meth in our jail. And we sent that guy that brought it in to prison for 9 years. He got 9 years on a plea deal. That stuff's dangerous. I mean, first off, 3 grams is so small amount, and it's, sheriffs are really, and county jails are really facing, problems. It used to be a guy'd bring a bag of weed in and you'd smell them smoking it in the jail, and you'd go down there and they really weren't a problem other than they were trying to eat their marijuana or flush down the toilet. This meth, they get so screwed up on it. These guys got so messed up in our jail. 2 of the guys were like army low crawling through our cell block for 4 days. They were just, they were like beetles, like BBs in a boxcar, going all over the place. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering about all the so-called legal drug houses around and our marijuana issue. They're people driving stuff, and how do we enforce that?
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, I was on Governor Schneider's medical marijuana advisory panel. I represented the 83 Michigan sheriffs on this panel. And there was myself, there was a chief of police rep, a state police rep, and then a health department person out of 17. The other ones were a marijuana dealer, a marijuana distributor, a marijuana driver, a marijuana doctor. We were grossly outnumbered. And, in Mason County, Ludington right now is really pushing, the mayor's really pushing, he'll tell you he's not, but he is, for marijuana sales in Ludington. I understand Manistee has passed it, right? Do they have marijuana stores in Manistee?
Working on it.
They're going to, okay.
Recreational and
So I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but as ambassador of Mason County, I've sat back and said, let's see what happens in Manistee. They can make millions of dollars, and they can deal with it up there, and then if it's profitable and it's safe, more than anything else, see what happens. But I will tell you, in Mason County, in 2012, 13, and 14, we had 0 drivers or people killed in car wrecks that tested positive for marijuana. 0 in 12, 13, and 14. 2015, we had 1. 2016, we had 2. 2017, we had 3. The 3 in 2017, 2 were single vehicle accidents, and 1 was the young boy that went through the stop sign at 31 in Sugar Grove, the Ludington kid that went underneath the semi and was killed. 2018, we had a couple. 2019, so far in Mason County, we've had 6 fatal car wrecks. Of those 6 fatal car wrecks, 5 we've received the toxicologies back on. Of the 5 we've received toxicologies back on, 4 have been either drug or alcohol. 4 have been drug or alcohol. The problem with Michigan is they rushed this through, and now they're trying to build the airplane mid-flight. The plane is launched, and they're trying to figure out how to get it under control. And innocent people will die. I bicycle. I enjoy bicycling. My doctor told me, 4 or 5 years ago, you're fat, you need to do something. And I bought a bicycle, and I bicycle. And I just, the cars that pass me, where you can smell marijuana rolling out of them, scares me to death. I like to bicycle out to the Ludington State Park a couple, 3 times a week. It's a beautiful ride. But, I'll ride my bicycle by a car, and it just reeks of marijuana as they're sitting on the side of the road. And at some point that car's going to be coming up behind you, heading back towards Ludington. So, to answer your question, it's going to get worse for the marijuana before it gets better, I think. And people scream and holler at me about that, but I'm like, you know what? I'm a county sheriff. I don't know why you would think I would be on the bandwagon of marijuana. I don't get why you would think. I told one guy one time, I said, I used to work with a really lazy guy. And I knew when I came in and we were partners, I would take all the calls. And if he picked up one call, that was a win for me. You know, I said, so if you get one sheriff in the state of Michigan that buys into what you're selling, that should be a win for you. You know, it's just not going to happen. So, I don't know. It's kind of sad, actually. Yes, sir.
Years ago, when I first started working for Illinois Bell, they showed us some Signal 30 films of car accidents, the actual accident hitting. The actual accident hitting, you know, and real people. And it was an eye-opener for me to see, you know, that this is what a car can do to you if you're careless. My question or my thought is, do you think that might help if we showed the kids in school, I'm talking about, you know, grade school, high school, and so forth, this is what marijuana, this is what meth will do to you, and have vivid photographs and so forth, and maybe shock them a little bit, and then a lot of do-gooders say, well, that's too horrible. No, it's real life.
Yeah. So maybe marijuana, or maybe the meth component might get some people to think, but the marijuana's not, because the moms and dads are doing marijuana. And they're just going to say, look, man, it's just, you know, these are the cops, they would expect you, you know, they're not going to support it. You know, so the marijuana, you got to get buy-in from the parents, and you're just not going to see that, I don't think. Some will, but most won't. You know, we had I'll tell you this, so Susan, our GOP chairperson, last meeting was complaining about all the gray hairs in the room at the Republican meeting. And I see a lot of gray hairs here. But I will share with you a saying Winston Churchill had. Winston Churchill said, if you're 30 years old and not a liberal, you don't have a heart. And if you're 60 years old and not a conservative, you don't have a brain. So, that's a true quote from Winston Churchill. So, do not be. So I would hope that parents, as they get older, would see the dangers. You know, we've had such an increase in our mental health problems in Mason County. I don't know about Manistee, but Mason has really had a lot of mental health issues. And I just wonder what the root of that mental health problem is in our community. Is it substance abuse at a young age? The marijuana that these kids are smoking now are so high in concentration that, you know, the THC of the marijuana of the 70s was, you know, 0.5% to 3% THC. Now, a layman, if you will, growing marijuana in his house with a little bit of knowledge can get 25% THC. And when they do the butane hash oil, they do the extractions of the marijuana wax, and they're putting butane in these PVC pipes, and they're stacking all that marijuana in there, and they put a cheesecloth underneath it, and they drain out this syrup that comes out. It's 90 to 95% pure THC. That's what young Mr. McDougal got into the night before he went under the semi, that 16-year-old boy in Ludington. And we actually have a video of him smoking the stuff, and boom, down he goes, and then an hour later he's killed in a car wreck.
That was graduation night.
Homecoming night. Yes, ma'am.
As a nurse for many, many years, what I found was we were beginning to, before I was retiring, we were beginning to get people in that had started with, gee whiz, marijuana. It was a new thing at that time, okay? The problem that they did not recognize is that when you have taken it and now it's stronger or whatever, if you wind up with serious injuries or serious surgery, the medication that you would receive in the hospital has to be altered and given the strongest of medications, which are the most addictive medications, because the other stuff doesn't work anymore. You're so used to certain levels. And I don't think people really truly understand that. Oh, this is just a recreational thing. No, it's not just a recreational thing. It's a life-changing habit, and it may be fatal. Thank you.
But see, you're a nurse, so you just, you know, you're a funny gunny. That's what they you know, nurses and cops, they don't understand. You know, that's what people will tell us. You know, the guy that killed Paul Butterfield, whose name I will never say, you know where he went after he killed Paul? To Calava to a marijuana house to try to get dope, and he got kicked out. He told the guy there that he killed a cop, figured he killed a cop, shot him in the head, and the guy threw him out of the house, and he goes down to Dublin, and that's where they had a shootout. That's what he was doing up there. He was trying to get marijuana. He wrote me basically, I have that kid's, it ended up being a suicide note, is what it was. You know, he wrote me a note the day our guys took him to prison. And he said, the first thing he said is, he said, "I'm sorry I killed your friend Paul Butterfield." Paul and I worked cases together when I was a sergeant and he was a trooper. And when I was running for sheriff, you know, Paul had that property on Hope Road right down from the voting site there in Grant Township. He says, "Put some signs up in my yard." And I'm like, "Well, can't you get in trouble for that?" "Well, not if you don't tell anybody, just put some signs up." So anyway, but that's what he did. He tried to get some marijuana. And that came out during the trial. So, yes, sir.
I have a question. How do you really know how bad things are when these guys are taking narco almost every other week?
Right.
Each time it could be death.
Right.
And your numbers would be just out of sight. It wouldn't be through.
Yeah, and now they take Narcan with them. They're given to them at mental health. You can get it through Rite Aid, they'll give it away, and so you really don't know how many overdoses you're having. And I'll tell you, the concept behind Narcan, Ted Schindel in Benson County was the first law enforcement agency, Benson County Sheriff in the state, to carry Narcan. And I thought that was pretty cool, so I started looking at it, and Mason County was probably in the top first five counties to have Narcan. And the concept behind it was great. You know, these kids overdose, it's somebody's son, you know, you don't want to have to go tell mom or dad that their kid died of a drug overdose, and they'll turn it around. Well, that just isn't the case. We've Narcaned the same people 2, 3, 4 times. And you got to wonder at what point, you know, does it become, where do you draw the line and say, I'm not going to Narcan this guy the 6th time and let him die? That's a hard call to make, because that's not what police officers or nurses are supposed to do. They're supposed to save lives. So, yes, ma'am.
How much is Narcan? And do they, like, if you administer it to someone, do they have to pay for that?
Yeah, it'd be nice. It's about $47.50 a dose. A dose. And we've given like 4 doses to one person because they had that high fentanyl in their system. We got a video of one overdosing in our jail. We stopped her on the freeway for drug driving and got her to the jail, and she OD'd during booking, and we Narcaned her in the jail. Saved her. That was a Benson County kid.
Let me go on with my thing. So
Yeah.
I have a Boy Scout troop. And I was talking to a woman the other day, and she says, you need to have one of these. She goes and gets this box, and it's the double dose one.
Yeah.
And it costs $85 or something like that. And I was kind of blown away by that thing. And then I was thinking, well, what if I don't know, I'm gonna make that, you know, what if Mason County on a given day, 12 people are given this drug to save them?
Right.
But nobody will ever know that.
Right.
That's the problem.
So,
They have right on me, you have to report that you gave this.
but yeah, see, and they don't. In the hospital, Spectrum doesn't really work with us very well, and I'll say that knowing full well we're being recorded because they know how I feel. So, the hospital will not report overdoses to law enforcement. And before, you know, you really need that data, not to jam a person up for his OD, but get the guy or the gal to supply them with the heroin. That's our goal. And I was at a meeting, I sit on the medical control board in Mason County. The sheriff sits on the medical control board. I don't know anything about medicine. I'm just a Huntington High School kid that got lucky and got elected sheriff. Matter of fact, I didn't even know I was on the medical control board for 1.5 years. They called me. Said, "Are you ever going to make a meeting?" And I'm like, "What meeting?" "Well, you're on the medical control board." So I went to this one meeting, and I said, we'd learned about, well, what happened was we had these kids that were vaping in the high school kids. Remember that 3 years ago? It was the only time the legislators voted 100% on an issue, and we'd had like 6 kids overdose on these vaping pens at schools in Mason County. of the 6, I think 4 were medevaced out by helicopter. And we found out during the investigation there were actually 2 at West Shore that did, but they got self-transported and the hospital never notified us. So, in a medical control board meeting one day, I said, well, it's nice to know that. I said, so you're telling me if I've had enough of my wife, I can shoot her full of heroin and drop her on the steps of the hospital and I get away with murder. Well, no, you get caught. I'm like, at what point am I going to get caught? Because you never notified. Oh yeah, you've given us something to think about. Well, that never went anywhere. They don't report walk-in traffic crashes either. They don't notify law enforcement if someone walks in that's been hurt, but they get self-transported to the hospital. And that was the other thing I said. I said, so if I don't have any heroin, all I got to do is beat my wife up, throw her behind my car and run over her, and then drive her to the hospital, and I get away with it, right? Well, no, I said, and that's, I'm obviously being facetious. These guys bring me to speak to them. But, I share that because we have to communicate, okay? That's the breakdown of our system is we're not communicating with other entities to make our community better. And to this day, Spectrum still doesn't notify us on drug overdoses. And so we're not getting the accurate data. You're absolutely right. Dick, you're absolutely right. We're not getting it. Yes, ma'am.
Just one other thing with this the teenagers starting to take all these drugs. How many of those young women are going to be pregnant soon? And are they taking that as they're getting pregnant, or they're 1 or 2 months along, they're not sure, but they continue to do the drugs? Now you're going to have an addicted baby, or a baby that maybe has some malformations because of some of the things going on in the body.
Yeah.
And I don't think the kids are being told how serious this really is.
Right. They're not. And again, if they are, oftentimes the parents downplay it for them. So, but you're right, we're seeing more babies being born with THC in their system. Years ago, I had twins born with cocaine in their system, and I tried to get the mother for delivery of cocaine. And that was when Van Oostrum was the prosecutor, and Chris wouldn't charge on it.
I'm also a nurse, and the thing that concerns me, and is really not talked about, thanks, Steve, is the silent damage that the drugs do to growing brains.
Right.
And you hear very little about it. But, fast forward 10, 20 years, how are these people going to be functioning?
Absolutely, and that's what I mentioned earlier about mental health. We're seeing so many people we're taking out of county on mental health transports. You wonder if it started, the person's 30 years old, you wonder if it started at 15 smoking marijuana and it progressed into pills and heroin and meth from there. Yes. I share the story about Adam Johnson. Okay, I'll share this. Adam Johnson was the first heroin death I had in Mason County. You have something else you want to say?
No, I was just going to say that what we have done is perpetuate our mental health problem.
Sure. Yeah. So Adam Johnson was an 18-year-old kid that I caught with marijuana at the Crystal Lake boat launch one night when he was 18 and I was a night shift guy. And he and some buddies were smoking some weed. We rolled him the tickets and we let him go. He's 18. At 23, I stop a car one day. Adam's in the front seat. Under the seat, we find a crack pipe. 3 people in the car. Nobody claims ownership of the crack pipe, so we can't charge anyone. At 27, 4 years later, my second year in office, 2014, Adam Johnson dies of a heroin overdose in his mom and dad's basement. And the prosecuting attorney and I had a discussion because he bought the dope in Muskegon, shot it up in Ludington, died in PM Township. So the prosecutor said, well, we'll just let Muskegon deal with it because the the county that has jurisdiction is any one of those 3, where they bought it, where they shot it, or where they died. So they were just going to let Muskegon deal with it. And I said, no. His mom and dad live in our county. His mom and dad put you in office, Mr. Prosecutor, and you're going to charge him in Mason County because he's a Mason County kid. And in Muskegon County, he's just a number in the morgue, right? I mean, I don't mean to be cold-hearted about it, but they don't care. It's not that they don't care. I mean, he's just a number to them. And Paul ended up prosecuting that guy in our county, and they gave him a honey of a deal, and Judge Snagowski turned it down. They were going to give him 5 years, and the judge was like, no, he killed him, he delivered heroin to a guy that died. It's 9 years for trial. So he took 9. So, anything else? Any other questions, concerns? Yes, sir.
One thing that bothers me, and I spent 40 years of my life riding in a police car as a reserve officer, and it's the fact that the officers are getting attacked and killed. You know, there's 35, 37, whatever it is so far this year.
Right.
My question to you is what would you recommend? And we do. One of the thoughts I had was instead of currently when you get pulled over for speeding or whatever, the officer has to walk up to the car. He's vulnerable, you know, and could get shot. Why don't we change the law so that the driver picks up his registration, proof of insurance and all that, and walks back to the police car? The officer gets out of the car, he's standing behind a bulletproof door. They have the car companies make a bulletproof door. He can see the guy walking out. If the guy's got just the documents in his hand, he's not a threat, you know, and we'll eliminate that possibility. But when the guy walks up, boom, right in the head, or what back in the ball, and so forth. You know, it just, what do you, question,
that's
what
a
are
great
your thoughts
idea.
about that?
I hadn't thought about that. You know, right after Paul was killed, Ray Franz, he was the state rep at the time. Ray calls me and he says, hey, I'm going to propose legislation that you guys have to walk up to cars on traffic stops with ballistic shields. I'm like, Ray. We can't walk up with, you know, these riot shields asking people for their driver's licenses. He was fired up. You know, I had sent letters right after Paul was killed to Governor Schneider, Senator Boer, and Ray Franz, saying there needs to be legislation that allows the death penalty in certain first-degree murder convictions. This guy had already been convicted of killing Paul, first-degree murder. I said, you know, communities shouldn't have to suffer like our communities did when Paul was killed. And Ray Franz was the only one that responded back to me. And Ray Franz called me, and he said, Kim, I got your letter. And if I had it my way, I'd tell you to take the son of a bitch out behind the jail and burn him at a stake. But we can't do that. That's exactly what he said.
That sounds like great.
That's exactly what he said. But he goes, we can't do that. And we'd have to change the Constitution to bring the death penalty back into Michigan. And, you know, it's just not going to happen. But there are some things that asking the person to get out of the car is really not a bad, I've never given that a thought, but.
You know, just the loudspeaker in the car, you know, you just bellow out and please exit the vehicle with your documents and walk back. And again, the officer would be standing there behind the bulletproof door, you know, in case the guy's got a gun behind his back or something, and tries to shoot. And then the officer's got at least a much better chance than when he walks up to the car with his pistol still in his holster.
You know, with all the craziness going on in our country, we still really do. Like I said, when Paul was killed and my wife, I'd never been west of Milwaukee, Wisconsin at that point in my life. And I learned how cool our country really is. You know, so we went out west, and I do crazy little quirky things. I needed to find where Forrest Gump stopped running, right? So we go out west, and I researched, and I found the spot where Forrest Gump stopped running on that road. There's a marker there. So along the way, there were all these highway dedications for police officers and military soldiers who died. And I had come back, and I called the state police, and I said, hey, you know, are you looking to get a piece of highway dedicated in memory of Paul Butterfield? And, you know, the state police are very professional. They said, no, we're not going to do that. And if we did, it would take years to go through the legislators. But one guy called me, a state trooper called me, who's a friend of mine, who I won't say, and he said, you know, if the sheriff made that request, you could probably get that done pretty quick. So I called Ray, and my suggestion was 31 from County Line to Town Line Road. That was the stretch of road where Paul lived, you know, it was his township. And they went with M116 out to the state park, which is a nice stretch of road too. But there's a lot of really, this is still, to me, this is the greatest place to live. And this area is beautiful, you know, when we go to, I grew up in Leland. I spent a lot of my time in Leland as a kid. Like I said, my mom was 16 when I was born, so my grandpa was a wheelsman on the boat. And when I was probably 6, 7, 8 years old, my mom would probably had enough of me, and she'd throw me in the car with grandpa, and I'd go to Leland for his 8-day pass. And it's just great. When my wife and I go north, we try to make a trip in the fall, and I turn off at the Burger King here on 31. I don't go up to the casino. I take that first of the road, and the lakeshore line is just gorgeous up there. I mean, if I had $1 million, I'd buy a house up there somewhere. You know? But it's just, it's. Anything else?
Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, does anybody have anything they want to share with the group tonight?
On Saturday, Manistee County Republican Party is having our first annual cook-off, apple cook-off. And we're asking, anybody can come and bring an apple dish, anything made with apples. We don't care what it is, no alcohol. That's our thing, because we're at the Bear Lake Baptist Church. Meet that. And we're gonna do a People's Choice Award, and we're gonna sell tickets 10 for $5, so you can vote for your favorite apple dish. And I have the petitions for John James, if anybody wants to sign that, just let me know what county you're in.
Get them on the ballot?
To get them on the ballot. Yep. They don't have to be in until, I'm not sure when, quite a while, but just let me know what county you're in, because it has to be done by county. That's all.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just add to her petition thing that the second district is, the Republican Party is hosting a John James fundraiser on November 12th. It's $100 to be there, and he will be the speaker. So you can go to his website and sign up.
Where is it gonna be?
It's in Muskegon. It will be in Muskegon.
November 12th.
November 12th.
Anyone else?
Is that $100 per person, or?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, our next meeting, as I mentioned before, is Thursday, November 21st, with Steve Yoder. And thanks everyone for coming tonight.
Yep, you know,
Today is May 1. It's actually only about 10 to 9. Look at the moon come up into the picture. Right up in the very top corner, you can see at about 1 o'clock, you can see a harp seal kind of tipping over a little bit. Good night for moon pictures.
Yeah, maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
It's gonna be this will be a blue moon month a little bit. Now it's recording. I'll show you when I widen it out a little bit. There's all kinds of things you can see on the moon if you can bring it in long tight enough. This camera, this is a very cheap Sony. But can you see the seal? Oh, it's lost the focus. Okay. See the seal up there, and then with one view, these are sunglasses.
Yeah.
Sunglasses, and the guy is looking about this way.
I see that. I can tell. Yeah.
And then there's another view where, to me, it flips, and then the guy is looking straight at 9 o'clock, and then that's like Elvis. So the two big craters are his hair.
Oh, that is cool.
And as you look, you can see more and more stuff.
Cool. What a nice night.
Yeah, it's not quite full. We got a little bit of about 8 o'clock. There's a little bit of shadow, but
Pretty close, though.
yeah. You can't wait too long because tomorrow night I might be overcast. you know.
Yeah, right. All right, take care.
Good night. We're gonna let the moon I think there's a little bit of shadow at about 7 o'clock, but tomorrow night it'll be full. But like I just told the guy here, I can't wait till tomorrow night because tomorrow night might be totally overcast. Part of our sky is overcast. To the west, we've got cloud cover. Oh, but I do this partially just to give you an opportunity to look at the moon, see if you can see the faces of the moon like I can see. Again, 1 o'clock, there's what I refer to as a harp seal, big eyes and big nose. Kind of laying on his head, his eye is just about at the very top of the picture. Then, of course, there's the man in the moon that's looking right at, probably right at about 8:30. And he's got great big hair, would be, to me, it would be Elvis. And then the other one, the hair now becomes big, huge, dark sunglasses. See, it flips back and forth for me. One guy's looking at 9, and one guy looks kind of, see, it flips back and forth about every second for me. But that's because I'm very creative. Then if you look right in front of the guy's nose, there's another little object there, which I sometimes identify as a, oh, here we go, lost my focus. Another seal laying right on his side. I've never been able to find anything in the southern, down by the South Pole other than the huge crater. Those craters are probably 200 miles and 100 miles in diameter at least. And the sky is actually blue, but because I can control my exposure, I can make the moon so it shows up a little better. Got birds out here chirping, robins, motorcycle, robin again. I know you want me to tell you because people want to know. As they say, inquiring minds want to know. They probably want to know if Mike will ever stop talking. No. Oh, going into a cloud bank. And I think I'm done, at least for a while. Good night. Well, I got through those clouds. I'm back. You'll see this quite a few times. This is called full moon. Anybody watch my stuff knows I see there's a cloud. Can't do much about the clouds. I think clouds actually add to global warming. Global cooling, I can't remember. Climate change, there we go. Climate is always changing, so we can always blame somebody. This is Black Cat, aka Bubby, aka Bubba, aka Black Cat, relaxing on Sunday afternoon.
Please get running, D.O.